Oh boy, I can't wait to enjoy some Unreal Engine 5 video gaming! Not so fast, Mr. Ghetto G here. Have a crash report. An Unreal process has crashed. UE Cronos. Unhandled exception. Exception access violation. Reading address 0 Bex F F F F F. Mwahaha! Game by Bloober team, not connected to some masterpiece of the past like Silent Hill, so we can judge it without the pressures and subjectivity that comes from nostalgia. Cronos The New Dawn is the first of 4 big horror releases at Gamescom 2025, unfortunately overshadowed by Hollow Knight Silksong, and in many ways it could be the creepiest. It's a post-apocalyptic, retro-futuristic survival horror game set in what's left of Poland at the height of the Cold War. Instead of nukes, Boberland was ravaged by a gruesome virus. You play the role of Traveler, an agent sent from the future by the mysterious Collective to try to fix the flow of time by rummaging through the dangerous past. The game features a classic Resident Evil-esque over-the-shoulder view. Combat using extremely limited resources with opponents that grow stronger and creepier by merging into increasingly grotesque creatures. Video tutorials are made in a way it seems like they are for people that never played a video game before in their life. Perhaps a telling sign of Bloober's targeted demographic. Press escape button for a video on how to use WASD to move your character around. LMAO. The technical state of this game. The stutters, freezes, the usual suspects. Game did crash on me a single time, but for the most part it was just frame rate dips, stutters, that kind of thing. One thing that happened one time is that I sort of got stuck after I exited a conversation you can have after it was supposed to, you know, exit that conversation. My character got frozen in place, kind of like mid-animation, and I was forced to reload there. Not exactly sure what happened, but as that probably spells out for you, the technical state isn't a complete bomb. It's not unplayable or anything. But it's a lot of those very commonplace issues that we've seen over and over again with basically anything made in Unreal Engine 5, it would seem.
Why can't you just let go?
Graphics are technically fine, apart from occasional stutters. The frame rate is capped at 60 FPS and the RTX 3080 has no problem to achieve that using the benchmarking's optimized settings. Aesthetically, the graphics and sound design work very well to put the player into the grim atmosphere of post-apocalyptic Poland.
Compromised.
The base game has a set difficulty to normal. Third-person shooting with a wobbly laser pistol is annoying at first, especially with default key bindings, where melee is using the same left mouse button as the charging and shooting of the primary weapon. I strongly advise to set right mouse button as toggle, and run button as toggle as well. Once you've played through the game once, you'll unlock 2 things: New Game Plus and Hard Mode. These are independent of each other. You can start a new game on hard mode if you want, or you can start New Game Plus on normal as an example. Hard mode is pretty much what it sounds like. It just strengthens the enemies, allows you to make bigger use of your arsenal, as you probably imagine, just to make the game harder. New Game Plus is a little different, purely because it seems like if you want the true ending, you have to beat the game again on New Game Plus. Keep in mind, there are some decisions that will lead to multiple other endings besides that one as well. We awaken as someone called a traveler. There have been previous ones before us. In fact, your first goal is to find your predecessor. And travelers' goals are to head back into time through various rifts known as dive points that you can then retrieve essences from people who lived in the past. These essences are meant to be added to the collective consciousness of something called the collective. This is going to allow you to hopefully figure out what caused what they refer to as the change. The change being this disease that overtook humanity and resulted in all these monstrosities known as orphans. You are not completely alone. You will meet one other character known as the Warden, whose job is basically to fix all of this technology that the previous travelers have set up and paved the way with, as they like to call it, in service of you doing your job, finding these dive points, etc. So you're going to make use of this technology and this information to navigate both the destruction of the far future as well as the past, right as the events are happening. And I like that they at least played around with trying to show off the big event. It was a fun thing to see. What makes it a little more interesting though, is that the essences you are collecting are not just items in your inventory. These are souls, people's consciousness that you are putting into your suit to safely carry back to the far future. And this basically means that they're going to haunt your suit. They are going to have an active effect on the gameplay. There's choices to be made there, and depending on the essences that are with you, they'll actually, chime in, and appropriately survival horror fashion, mind you, about various events that can lead you to some interesting information. They can also just make you straight up hallucinate, see things that aren't there, and it has a pretty good impact on the story. I would say there was some fun back and forth there, and without spoiling the rest of it, by and large, I liked the story. It really felt like an entire experience that made genuine use of the medium. It was trying to convey its story through. There are a few progression systems in this game. You have tools and weapons straight away. There are some various tools you can find. Some are part of your inventory, others will be with you at all times. To give examples of this, you'll find a pair of bolt cutters as part of the story if you keep those in your inventory, because you can put them in storage. You'll be able to cut open these various chains that you find around, which will give you access to more loot and stuff. So you always want to keep that with you. But then there's also other tools. There are these things called oddities in the game that will manipulate gravity and reality, and they are mostly involved in storytelling. You get an emitter early on that allows you to manipulate those, and that's permanent. There's also the more traditional stuff you would probably expect. Over the course of the game, you'll come across 7 different weapons, which are for the most part pretty fun. But they tend to be like one main type and then different variants of that type. Each of those weapons has upgrades that you can apply to it though, and this is done via energy. The main source of loot that you find is energy, either in its raw form via things like batteries, etc., or things you can sell, valuables, old radios, heaters, that kind of thing that you can bring back to your checkpoints and sell to the sort of computer vendor there. And then you can spend that energy on upgrading your individual weapons. The other side of that progression are cores. Cores are an actual item you'll find, typically by exploring. But also the game does just kind of hand them to you. These are going to let you upgrade your suit, as well as a couple of flame-based weapons. The suit is pretty straightforward. More health, more inventory size, that kind of thing. Making the game just generally easier, as your inventory is a fair bit limited at first. Which is why carrying things like the bolt cutters around is a big deal, because it takes up a precious inventory slot. But the fire weapons are your torch that you always have. That if you are using a weapon that takes like a specific kind of ammo, you do have to actively reload and stuff in order to get ammo from inventory slots into the gun. So it's actually loaded and ready to go. And the game doesn't just do that intuitively when you're trying to manage your inventory. Especially annoying when you have several guns. With that limited arsenal, you're still going to have to fight and burn your way through all of these orphans and their biomass. And while resources are limited, you'll also be able to pick up chemicals and metal scrap, which is going to enable you to craft various things, mostly ammunition and healing patches. There are a few different types of ammunition based on the type of weapon you have. Some of them share the same ammo types. There's also the stuff I mentioned with the bolt cutters. I would say it's actually pretty important to keep those with you, so you can open all sorts of doors and find secret caches. Another aspect of this though is you can find cats. As one would probably expect from cats, they have somehow survived the horrors of the far future apocalypse. And you can find 10 of them to be specific. And often, finding them and petting them will give them rewards. But it also sends them back to your room at the terminal, which is kind of cute. In particular, these cats can often give you a lot of upgrade materials on your way. So, things like cores and stuff. But what's more, they actually do sometimes drop keys for various doors and stuff which you can't get into otherwise. So in some ways, the cats are pretty integrated into some of these little exploratory puzzles. Cats give a nice little break from the horrors of everything else going on. Speaking of those horrors, let's talk a little bit about the orphans and the change now. So there's one primary mechanic that you have to worry about with every single type of these guys, and that is merging. What you don't want to do is let enemies merge. If I look to be not stressed at all and have a bunch of weapons, that's because playing through it on New Game Plus allowed me a lot more resources than you would normally have, mind you. So it's much easier to prevent things from merging.
Relic module found. An emitter.
But the way to prevent things from merging is basically to deal enough damage that it interrupts them or to set them on fire. The reason you don't want to let them merge though, to be more specific, is that it is going to increase their speed and their damage primarily at first.
The predecessor, ND3500, reached.
In conclusion, I really enjoyed this. There's some minor problems, some things that I think are a little annoying, but honestly, I don't think they ruin the experience. Like the boss fights, as an example, was probably my biggest one personally. And then I'm sure people won't be happy about some of those technical issues, as Unreal Engine 5 continues to plague a lot of these games. As a complete experience, I really enjoyed it, and so it gets 83 out of 100.
The predecessor was on a search for a target called Edvard Wisniewski. Calculating coordinates. Confirmed dive location in D3. The nearby housing project. You never reached him. I will carry on where you left off. The vocation continues.